Millville Regional Schools Committee for October 9th to order. We're going to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. The Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next is we will go through introduction of members.
I'm Steve Tringali from Millville.
I'm Mike Buckley from Blackstone.
Brian Faulkner, Millville.
Morgan McCarthy, Blackstone.
Kathy Robinson, Millville.
Diane Robin, Blackstone.
Wendy Greenstein, Blackstone.
Erin Vanaco, Millville.
Dr. Perry Davis, Superintendent of Schools.
And Bill Chaplin from Blackstone. We will move to the consent agenda A under the warrants.
Move to accept consent agenda A.
The one item, the school committee minutes from the last meeting, we had a technology glitch. They're not available. And Monique is working on the technology.
Move to accept consent agenda A without the
Minutes of the
Minutes of
September 26th.
September 26th
Second.
meeting.
That's right.
Motion made by Ms. Robbins, seconded by Mr. Buckley. Any discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Use of school facilities, are we going to go through each one of them? Or do you just want to go through? We just did all three. didn't
You
we?
did all three of
Okay,
them?
just
Yeah.
did all three. Report to the superintendent.
The first item is Mr. Cameron from the middle school. You had questions about his DC trip. So he has come this evening to answer any questions that you have. If you recall, in the last meeting, you agreed to authorize the field trip to DC, but you did have questions for Mr. Cameron. Okay?
And I think I'm bringing up on Apple TV just the presentation that I don't necessarily need to make unless you want me to make it. Good evening, by the way.
Good evening, Joseph.
I made the presentation for the parent evening that we had this past Monday, if it will work.
I don't think we can see it.
I can slide one over if it decides to cooperate. Usually takes a minute. This one just kicked on. And I have some handouts for anybody that would like them. This is the parent envelope that they get from World Strides. Packet of information they received from me. One thing that I didn't necessarily get into detail with my family night was fundraising efforts that we're going to put forth to help support the students and the families that may see this trip as maybe fiscally out of reach. I'll just start wherever you want me to start. We can put this one over.
I think members of the committee, as I recall, had questions about how it went last year. We're looking for comments, but I won't speak for the committee.
Could you just talk about how it ran last year and how you're going to change it this year? I know some of it was the evening travel and hotels and things like that. You said you're thinking about changing.
Sure. I suppose in reflection, the changes that are going to be incorporated for this year, there aren't really any broad stroke changes, which I have to share is mostly because this was an experience that I had helped leading the trip for about 10 years in a former district. So it's not that this year's group of 8th graders are going to have really that different of an experience than last year's 8th graders. One of the differences, though, is we did make the decision, even though it added a little to the cost, to not travel through the deep of night. We felt that even though it did increase the cost a little, one of the things that I reflected upon with the chaperones was the times that the drivers would switch at the rest stops and the number of kids that would want access to the bathrooms at those rest stops. And, being 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, that wasn't something that, I was interested in doing again. So last year's price point, the goal was to keep it the lowest possible without compromising the integrity of the trip or the safety of the trip. And I don't think it compromised the safety, but I think if we made a commitment to go every single year to leave at 11 o'clock at night and travel through 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, that's not the best commitment to make. So whereas I received the blessing from this committee last spring to really share with then the group of 7th grade parents that this is a trip that's still a goal that the school would offer, to save up, that's why the price point went up a little. There's not much other than holding our families to a firm deadline of paying up to 75% of the trip's cost that I would change in terms of the hotel. The hotel was beautiful in my estimate. We always make sure that both the buses and the hotels are within 5 years in terms of, the buses. All 3 buses were like 2011, 2010, and the hotel was modern as well. Because we had so many families, I think it was something like 14 or 16 families still hadn't paid up to 50% of it even a week before we left. It compromised us just having floors just to ourselves, which was a goal of mine and something that I had in the former district for many years. And to be honest, it's a goal of the hotel as well. I don't think they really want their guests to step onto a floor and see 87 14-year-olds.
Any other questions?
Just what was the price last year to this year?
Yep. Last year, I believe it was $560, and this year we are at $636.
What were the fundraising events you're going to have?
So last year, I really depended upon the vacation clinics to offer the elementary students and to have the 8th graders help me host the 4th, the 5th graders. I think we even went as young as 3rd graders last year. We would look to do something similar, but I will share from the family meeting that I had this past Monday, I have already received, I think I'm up to 13 emails from families looking for scholarships. So I have already increased the total number of last year by 3 or 4. And I think we're really still in the early stages. So I have put together something that I used to do in a former district, and that is something that the Music Association also does, but I did receive their blessing to do it in the fall. They do theirs in the spring, and it's a monthly raffle. So for every single day, there's a different prize. And the raffle tickets would be $25, but there's 19 chances of winning. You can win more than once. And it's going to benefit scholarship, but it's also going to benefit all the kids who go, because there are some bells and whistles you can add on that increase the cost, similar to last year when we went to the Red Sox game, that I don't want to say to families a month before we're leaving, congratulations, you paid the $636, now you owe another 15 for this, and 10 for this, and 5 for that. We're not interested in feeing them at all. Even getting them outfitted in the same T-shirt, which is so important on the last day of touring when they're all kind of just walking around like zombies, is important to me. There's a cost to that, but it's important that, whatever we can do as a district fundraising-wise, that's part of that money raised as well.
Any other questions?
Now, Justin, how does this tie out to so is this just prior to the spring vacation, or when's the spring vacation?
The April vacation, I think all vacations this year, Thanksgiving's like November 28th, is later.
Okay.
So we arrive back late Saturday night. We, adults included, have Sunday to rest up, and then actually we have a full week of school.
Okay.
That's before April vacation. April vacation is later this year.
For 4 days. I think that Friday is Good Friday.
Okay, yeah.
Correct.
Right,
So it's
yeah.
4 days. Absolutely
Okay.
right. So there'd be many of us that may not be at our best, But we can use, the Good Friday, the Easter holiday, and all that week to kind of recharge, for the rest of the school year.
Okay.
We're well out of, we're in the middle, the eye of the MCAS score, but we're in a good place where it doesn't even come close to the ELA tests in, I don't want to say mid-March, but late March. And certainly MCAS testing doesn't revisit until like the second week in May, I believe, is the window.
Good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I mean, I was at the parent meeting, and it was very thorough, and, I liked how you connected it all to learning in terms of on the bus and the videos that they would show before they would go to a certain place, and the videos would be of their peers, teaching a lesson on the Capitol, or why is it still shut down, or whatever. So I liked that piece, how it's all connected to learning, and, the questions that you got that night, I think, was around, rooms, and is my son or daughter going to be with their friend? And your response to that was perfect, because really all they're going to be doing is sleeping there, and they're going to be so tired they're going to go get knocked out and then go right up and get to it again. So I thought it was a well done presentation, and I think there's a lot of buzz about it. I don't know if you've gotten feedback on the cost or anything like that, but I think it's manageable.
I sent out a very quick exit survey the following morning. I only have about 55 responses, so it might be something that I send out again. And it really is granting an allowance for them to connect with me, another way for them to connect with me in terms of scholarship need, what's on their mind, why they may be hesitant. 98% say they're going. There were 3 families that said maybe. And then after the maybe was, are you comfortable sharing the reason why? And I think 3 or 4 of them says, it was the cost, which allows me to reach out to them as much. Because I should have mentioned World Strides also offers their own scholarship.
Okay.
And World Strides shares that, they don't, if we grant a scholarship, then their eligibility is a little different, but I'm going to be very candid in a very public way, tap tap, and I tell our families, just don't let them know. If World Strides can help them and we can help them, and it gets them closer to a 8th grader going on this trip, I think that's wonderful.
Great.
Because I think the max they offer is 100, which brings it down a little, but. My goal is for every family in need to bring this cost down 50%. And we were able to do that, I think, between, I can't remember if it was either 8 or 12 families last year that we brought the trip down to about 200, 220.
Great.
And Mr. Chaplain, thank you for the compliment. The videos on the buses were student-made. So as we were driving up to monuments or to museums, I don't know how well this is actually.
Ceremonies you're going to see.
The bottom video there, oops, that was my iPad crashes, was an 8th grade student who produced a video here through our video production club, and many 8th graders. So we would put DVDs in all 3 buses, and students delivered through their DVD presentation like a 4-minute presentation of wherever we were pulling into.
Nice.
So we found a way to really use technology as something that would motivate them here. I consider it a 21st century kind of docent project. Docent project is where we would pass a group and students were doing presentations with the backdrop of the Lincoln Memorial. And that's very hectic, very, very hectic, because you can imagine how many people are there. So it's nice in theory, but to see it is very overwhelming for the child. So we really used the buses as a time where the World Strides staff would shut their microphone off and not do the pre-teaching. We would put the DVD in, and our own students would teach themselves about where we were going.
That's kind of cool. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Welcome.
One last question. If the government's still shut down, are you going to change the plan?
I thought of it.
Good
I said, oh, I
question.
better not go there.
On the fine
Gonna be
print
open,
there, you
right?
guys were approving Cancun if there's still a government shutdown.
Fair enough.
At least the weather will be nice.
Mr. Chaplain, are you going to be
When can
chaperone
we
it
get the
soon?
calendars if
You
people
sure?
are interested, or the public is interested?
Because he gave
They're
the
sold
couple
at
extra
the
days.
middle school.
Yep. They'll probably be on sale at the Wizards game as well. In fact, these are extra, so if you're interested in any of the prizes, feel free to just drop me an email.
The next item, Mr. Chairman, is the committee, at the last meeting, I presented the proposal for baseball field improvement, and I put that same memo in your package. Coach McNamara is here, along with Mr. Ducharme. You had some questions also about the fields, and Mr. Ducharme is here representing the athletic director, Mr. Silva, in recognition that he's coaching football and he lives an hour away. So I appreciate the fact that Mr. Ducharme is here to also kind of give a quick update on the fall athletics. But I'll let, again, Coach McNamara, people have your proposal, and there were just some questions, so maybe if the committee could ask you questions about the proposal going forward to make adjustments or changes to the field. I think one of the points of confusion, if I can, was the field is really a multi-purpose area. That is, soccer uses the outfield, so there's really soccer field, as well as softball, as well as baseball. So we don't really have three facilities. We have a shared facility using a parcel of land at the high school. And it needs work. It needs work, so.
Good evening. Yeah, the field's definitely in work, and that showed up last Friday with that rainstorm. We were supposed to have nice soccer games last Friday, but the field was, there's no grass. It was underwater. We had to cancel the games, and we had it last night. It went very well. A lot of people, great games. So I think that's what Mr. McNamara and the baseball and soccer programs are looking to do, is just donate some items to try to improve that backfield.
Backfield or front field?
Backfield, I call it the backfield, soccer field, baseball
Oh,
field.
okay.
The
No, I thought
backfield,
you
near the
were
rock.
saying
If we can get rid of that rock too, that'd be good.
Is that on here, rock removal?
You have to have something to paint.
You have to blast.
We could
That
keep a
rock's
portion
pretty
of it.
important.
We could keep a portion of it.
They'll find something to pay.
So what were the questions by the committee?
I think one of them was the fees, the hope of the district covering the fees. In, I think the rental, the baseball rental, is there something signed that they're going to be using it in terms of getting the rental from that, or is that a hope in?
They used it last spring, actually.
So they're definitely, that's definitely set in stone that they're going to be using that if.
No, they already used it.
Oh, they already used it, so the money's already
I believe they
there.
already paid, they didn't pay for it?
Again, the fee that was paid last year, you did not have the community use of school revolving account. So
Okay.
that money reverted to the general fund, so that's part of E&D at this point. Just to clarify, in order for the committee to use money, they had to create a revolving account, which means the money can roll from one fiscal year to the next. The money that was paid last spring, we did not have that revolving account in place, and therefore that money closed out to the general fund, so it's not available.
I will say, though, that
Yeah.
that baseball program has asked to use our fields every year for the last 4 or 5.
Yeah, they've used it several
We were
times.
actually asking for the amount, we were trying to clarify the amount that was paid.
I
Do you have
don't-
any idea how much they did pay last year, or historically?
That's not, that comes from the central office, has nothing to do
I'd
with
have to
the
go
high school
back and look.
office.
Did
I
not
think
ask the
it-
second
I
question.
think it
Asked
was
if the
in
money
order
was
of
there.
A couple $1,000s, though.
A
Because
couple
they had
thousand
quite a
per
few
year?
games scheduled. It wasn't just the spring, they had them scheduled right through the summertime.
Mhm.
I know Tim was handling all that with Kim at the time, so I don't know where it went.
So we're looking at $4,500 is what I'm seeing here that you want the district to come up with in terms of the additional stuff.
Yeah, if we roll the clock back, I mean, these guys back here are the two of the four captains out on the baseball team. They've been with it for 3 years now.
Can you,
They
Coach, could you
raised-
introduce them to us
Sure.
for you?
And we'd like to know the batting average and
Aaron Staples will be batting 600 this year. No.
There he is.
Dan Lodge and Matt didn't make it yet. And we also, nope, that's not here. Matt Holman and also David O'Connor are the 4 senior captains.
Great.
And what we try to do is we try to set up projects for this year's team. And this is the 3rd year they'd be doing one of the big projects. And they involve the fundraising, they involve the actual hands-on work as well. They've raised almost $17,000 so far and put it back into the field. So they've done a lot on their own. The 2 items that I was looking at was the field, the infield dirt is replacing the infield dirt and having some excess dirt, you know, to cover the wear and tear that happened with the AAU program over the summer. And the other item is really a safety issue. There are more foul balls during games because the softball team and the baseball team play back-to-back. And Morgan will tell you. Foul ball from baseball, all we do is yell, "Look out!" And you see all the girls on the softball team ducking their heads, the fans duck, and people get hit. Someone is going to get hurt. I don't know how it hasn't happened yet, but someone is going to get hurt.
And a few years ago, I don't know if you recall, but a few years ago, we actually brought the softball diamond back. We were too far away from the backstop to be able to host tournament games. So that's kind of why it's really coming into play the last few years compared to 30 years ago. We actually had to move home plate further back, which would, you know, then in turn make the foul lines closer to the baseball diamond and so on and so forth. So that's why the left fielder now for the softball are in much more danger than they were 10 years ago, 8 years ago, before we moved that field back.
So the netting is going to alleviate 100% of that, you think, or I mean, so the netting is going to go in between the fields?
No, what we're
It'll
looking to
be on
do is,
top
we
of
have,
it?
right now, we have 16 feet of backstop. Right, we want to put in a 60-foot pole, so we're going to be like 34 feet, going to put in the ground, an extra 30 feet on top of that 16 feet.
Mm-hmm.
You look at most of the foul balls, they're just about clipping the fence, you know, maybe 5 or 10 feet up. We're going to be up another 30 feet.
Mm-hmm.
It's also going to help us, you know, during practice, which kids, Ben will tell you, Ben caught poison ivy chasing the balls down by the brook. I mean, he was loaded, had to go get steroid shots. You know, and during the game, we have kids lined up on the fence. They have to go run and chase balls. We use 5.5, 6 balls a game. You know, once they hit the brook, they're done. You know, and we talked about moving the backstop in. That's about $23,000 to put a new backstop in. They're not cheap. They are expensive. You
Yeah,
know,
and that's
it's,
original equipment too, that's 43 years old.
Sorry?
That's 43 years old.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, it's, you know, we looked at we looked at Becker College this past summer, and their backstop is worse than ours. You know, that's a college. So ours isn't bad. You know, we actually started painting it. We're going to paint it. We secured the bottom of it so with the erosion of the dirt, the balls aren't getting underneath it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So we did some 10 to 11 care on it. But we came up with the idea of how can we prevent the balls from going into the softball field and possibly hurting someone and prevent them from going into the brook. And Mike DeCecco volunteered to get the poles donated and set them for us. You know, him and his father have been doing that around town for 30 years. So we need 4 poles. We're going to put a pulley system up and put the netting in. And, you know, I think it'll take care of a problem that's been ongoing for a long time. We have other issues with nets. Steve was right out here at one of the soccer games the other day. We got kids hitting soccer balls into the parking lot, you know, hitting fans, hitting cross-country runners. I mean, it's just, you know, I think we're smart enough now that we could probably alleviate some of these issues, but we'll do one at a time.
So basically, Mac, you're looking for the cost of the netting.
Cost of netting, right.
So the poles and the labor associated with the pole installation will be donated.
Right.
Okay. A little disappointed that you're losing all those in the brook, because when Hurley was there, you know, you have to dive in the brook.
We get them back.
Yeah, that's good. Well,
We just can't
Coach
use them in a
Silbo would
game.
be very happy with that, I'm
At
sure.
what cost, though?
Yeah, the balls are, what are they now?
Poison ivy and
Dozen
steroid
now.
shots.
They're very expensive too. for a dozen balls now.
Can you tell us what kind of condition the softball fields are in? I know that's not your field, but since you're representing the AD, maybe you can talk to it, because my concern is one of parity, that if we're gonna put money into the baseball fields, and I appreciate how much work you've done and the guys have done. I don't think the girls have that, don't have that ability or the leadership to get out there and do some of that work, and maybe they could use some guidance from your guys, get them together to do some work over there on the softball field. But my concern is if we put money into one or two fields, the baseball field and the soccer field, and we leave another field that's maybe not in the best condition, our money may be better spent to invest a little bit more, especially something like hydro seeding. If you're getting somebody out there to do, not the hydro seeding, but the slice seeding, I think you propose, right? We get somebody out there, we pay a couple $100 extra so we can get the softball field fixed up a bit too. I just don't want to put money into one program and have no money going into another program. It just doesn't look right, and it's not right. I appreciate all the work you've done. I know you've done a lot on your own, a lot of sweat equity's gone into it.
I think the reason, and again, I have a daughter coming up. She plays softball. So, Morgan, I've coached Morgan. I'm all for the softball program, the soccer program. I think it's important for all the athletics. The problem is, I think if we spread our money out, we'll get nothing done. So I think if we focus on getting an item done, and the ones we're talking about, the net is going to benefit both the softball and the baseball program. That's why I could justify that one. The additional infield mix, now we already spent like $8,000 just on the infield mix already. This is mix that's been worn out because of erosion and the play of the AAU teams. Those are the two items. The other stuff we're looking to do ourselves. The batting cages, doing the pitcher's mound, all that stuff is going to be a cost, and the baseball program is going to go off and fundraise and actually do the work for that. The slit seating is something, it's a maintenance cost. I think it needs to be done across the board for all the fields. It's going to benefit the softball, the soccer, and the baseball. It needs to be done. You saw what happens with the soccer ball when the crabgrass takes over and dies, and there's lumps, and that can be alleviated.
Yep.
We've actually done a lot of the work. The same group of people, Kevin Delgizzi, and who's over here right now, and a bunch of other parents have chipped in, and we've worked on Roosevelt Field Parks, Millville Park, Tabisi Park, both softball and baseball. So we kind of accumulated a bunch of knowledge on it, just for the mix. And I'm sure we get a team that can go off into the softball field. The infield mix for that softball field, because we just finished Roosevelt, is about $6,000. It's not, running up to Hood or whoever and get the mix that they have and putting it down, because that stuff doesn't work. They have all this chemistry behind it, and it ends up being too slippery and just washes away. We could do it, but it's tough when you're asking the volunteers, who are working full-time, to go off and do the work, but also, oh, by the way, we need you to fundraise too. That's where it gets hard, and that's where a lot of people raise their hand and give up. Fortunately, we have a group of people that push really hard for the baseball side, and wanted to see it done, and we got the improvements done. But I would love to do the softball field this year. Morgan would love to have it too, right, Morgan?
Yes, I would.
And I'm sure Morgan get a group of people that would help us, and sometimes more people is not better, but, a good 6 or 8
We get a group of girls together.
of good rakers, and, it's getting the mix is the key. So if we could find a way to get the softball mix, I'm sure we can get a crew to go off and recut that whole field, take out all the lips, level it, and put the infield mix, and have a great playing service for the girls.
Can you just talk about the what's going on in the fields right now? Because I know the marching band's using it, soccer's using it. I know you want to seed soon. Are those two things going to overlap at all?
If there's two approaches. If we do a slit seed, it's a less invasive on the total field. Bobby Morse, who runs B&M Landscaping, was going to be here, but he had to go to a wake tonight in Connecticut, so he couldn't make it. But he's the expert, really, on the field care. He's going to either do a slit seed or we're going to do an aerate and overseed. And if we can time it right, you know, with some bad weather coming in, you won't even notice it. It'll be gone. Problem is, if it's too late and it starts germinating and it doesn't have enough time to take, it's all going to die. If we push it off too late, it's actually better, or later it's better because it's going to stay in the ground. It's not going to germinate. It'll come out next spring. So he's going to be the expert. He's going to do the timing and which way, you know, if we get approval on it, what we're going to do and how we do it. So that's why we wanted to involve the soccer program, and that's why they're here, because both Hillary and Keith are varsity girls and boys soccer. Hillary, maybe you can raise your hand, and Keith McNamara can raise his. So we tried to coordinate it so whatever we do now, everyone's aware of it. We're not going to disrupt one program over another.
I mean, it's very clear that we need a fields program, ongoing, not just, you know, reactive like we're doing. You were here last year when I was sitting in the gallery saying the same exact thing, and John Eldridge is saying, yeah, we haven't done anything to the fields in years. So here we are again another year, and somehow we have to get ahead of it. I totally agree, because, you know, or we're always going to be chasing it. We're always going to be. So what's the position of the committee? Any other discussion that the committee?
Well, could we just get an idea, like, if we included the infield of the softball field, how much do you think we're talking there, as far as materials?
I
Would it
think
be another,
if we did another $6,000
another 6? Okay,
for the softball infield mix,
okay.
you know, and then we add the other two, so you're about 10 grand, I think it is, 10.5 or something. We'll do that right.
Okay.
It's about
Mr.
that,
Mr.
11
Superintendent,
Softball field would be easier.
Dr.
Do it individually.
Davis, how are we standing for funds in contracted services and/or any of those grounds and maintenance for the high school? How do those accounts look?
There are no funds in those accounts.
Okay.
You did not fund them, so there's no money.
Okay.
It's very,
That's nice.
there were minimal dollars in there for that.
All right.
And so, pray for no snow. There's $3,500 for snow. If there's more snow, more
How
problems.
did that happen?
No snow, $3,500.
And the proposal of your
But-
cost was how much?
Not the 4,200 accounts. We got
What was-
accounts.
It was $4,100 by itself. It was another $6,000 if we include the infield mix for the softball field. Is that right? Did we do that right? I'm doing off the top of my head.
4,100.
Yeah, it's like, item 1 is like
Slip
7.
The slip seating on top of that.
What are we gonna be getting from the
4,600,
use of facilities for the 2 recitals?
Did 500,
'Cause that will
2,000,
go
and
in.
2,100.
Right?
And can we use that
Yes.
money?
The recitals we just approved tonight.
Because those were 2 big ones.
Yes.
That's gonna be some money.
Well, I think once we have the revolving account, and we go through a whole year of what's in there, then we can better plan for
Well,
the
yes.
future years. in
I'm just
terms of-
looking for the, right now, because you're talking 8 days worth of events. It's gotta bring in a substantial amount of money.
And is that the use of facility account, do we have money in that now?
Well, we will be.
Do we have any in there now?
Do we have any money in the
Any
use of
money in the use of
facilities?
You
facilities?
just created that account last month.
For some reason I thought.
Remember, any money previously, before you
What
created
would
the
be
account,
in it?
went into the, closed to the general fund. We
Okay,
just created that account last month, and I'm not aware of any checks
Okay.
that have come into that account. The first
But we
ones
have these coming up.
they w-
It didn't have the amounts on them, though.
And we have no way of looking up what AAU paid us the past several years.
I can go to the cash book, and Donna Scungio can tell me what they paid, yeah. I asked if there was money, but that's when I was told it was closed out, because that was the way the books are set up.
So, Perry, are you asking us to make a recommendation here?
Chris, is there anything on here that's truly time sensitive? Like, I know the seating obviously is, but I'd imagine like the netting and the poles, could they wait till spring?
To overspend
Theoretically.
someplace else. And
Are there any other
I
things that
think
could wait
the
till
netting
spring?
could. The netting,
Yeah.
the poles there's no cost, we'd probably be better off putting the poles in,
Sooner than later, yeah.
or whenever we can get
Yeah.
him to do it.
Yeah, I'm just trying to break the cost down into
Yeah,
smaller
that's
bites.
actually a good idea. You could delay, and it wouldn't affect, I mean, we're not playing baseball or softball till the spring.
I think like the painting, you know.
Well, the painting's no cost
They're already
to the
doing.
district, we're gonna pay for that. The bottom, I don't know what page you, do you have the?
We have like
Okay.
six, so we have
So
6
4,
items.
5, and 6.
4, 5, and 6.
4, 5, and 6.
It's
1, 2, and
$4,500.
3 is gonna be covered by, the baseball program.
Okay.
I mean, the most important one right now would be the slit seating, to get it done.
Which is $500.
It's $500. I thought there was another proposal to do with this one, which was $750 to do out here. But that's,
And then material for the infield mix, would that need to be done this spring, Nat?
that should be done
Now.
this fall, right? Because if you don't, what's gonna happen, it's gonna wear over time, and they're gonna have a little bit of trouble playing on it in the spring. It should sit. If most of the field work is all done in the fall, so it goes through the winter.
So it's all settled?
It's settled, right?
So it's 2,600 if we push 2,000 for the netting. So the 2,000 is just the netting? And pulleys?
The 2,000 is the netting, yeah.
Okay.
That goes to the spring. And there's the material cost and the seating cost, which is $2,600. But if we add the softball, that's another
Another 6.
$6.
Yeah, I've looked up the grounds account, the management of the grounds. Most of your money that's available, you know, approximately $28,000 is in snow removal. It's just too early to project what we're going to need to do that. Then there are supplies for the high school grounds of $5,900 in the account, but that's also for other teams as we move through to spring season. So, you know, those fees were, you know, those, could we look at them again, but I don't see where you have this kind of money. Again, conversation in March, mild winter, we could have the money.
Right.
October, don't have that ability to forecast the snow at this point.
So is it $500 for the?
Seating.
So I see.
Yeah. You could absorb that. I'm
Gonna
10,
say
you can't, 10,
20 million?
I can't do 10.
Eight, we can't.
So if we can get the seating done, and you guys can do the stuff that you can do on the volunteer stuff, the polls, and then maybe if you talk to us, I don't know, first part of March, perhaps?
You're only
We may have
After the
the
winter.
bad winter,
Have to
the
figure it.
bulk of the winter will be behind us, and then hopefully we can
Swing the net.
do something with that. And then let's see what else we can do, you know, maybe we can get, you know, some maybe through some miracle we'll
Donation.
win the lottery.
But
Oh, yeah.
clearly, after a
Yeah.
year of having this revolving account, we're gonna be able to know what that's gonna generate each year, and then be able to forecast.
My budget, that's
Um,
how much we-
So you just gonna split seed the baseball, is it worth, what would the cost of split seed in the softball?
if you look at,
This is about $750.
like,
The softball or the soccer?
This
Out here, middle
soccer
school.
field.
What about this softball? Does that need to be seeded?
To the high school.
I mean, it all needs to be seated, honestly.
Well,
It
yeah, right.
definitely does.
So if we're just doing the baseball field, if we expanded it to at least the softball field as well and split seeded everything, would that just, would it double to 1,000?
I don't think so, because the softball field is much smaller than the soccer and baseball field. And if you know the softball field, right field goes on and on and on and on and on. So you'd only have to do, you know, what a normal softball field distance would be, maybe a little further since there's no fence. But you wouldn't have to do out by the, you know, way out right,
Yeah,
A gully, yeah.
you know.
okay. So a little more, just let's seed the whole,
Yeah, I
Baseball
would think
and
it
softball.
wouldn't be any, I don't think, personally, I don't think it would be as much as it would be to the soccer field and the
Yeah.
baseball field.
It would probably be no more than 750. Is that
do both.
something?
Most of that
to
is
do
I mean,
both?
it just could be a
Snow
function of
removal
how much
at
seed
the
you
two
put down.
schools.
Right.
You know, we could say, we'll put less seed down. or we'll manual aerate that and
21.
put more seed out.
Yeah.
So we can-
So would it be doable with the $750 if we
I
could?
met with Dennis.
If that's all we have, well, that's what we'll
That's
do.
to buy the
You know,
lining
we'll put
material.
enough, whatever seed we can down.
Extra
For
seed.
750.
Basically, that's probably what you're just paying for is the extra seed, because the machine will be down there already to buy the other field.
Right.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be that,
Right.
you know, a
Matches.
couple gallons of gas to run the machine through the
Matches, goes
softball
away.
field. It'd be the seed that would be the cost.
So what is the pleasure of the committee at this point?
Could we absorb the cost of $750 too, while we have the machine there and with the seed? Is that something that's doable within our finances?
Again, there's money in that budget. Much of it is for snow removal. Yes, you could spend that money now, but I could be back to you in March saying, we had 6 major storms, and we've got a problem.
If we get snow,
Oh.
you guys are gonna have to come and shovel.
Yeah.
And we'll call it even.
It-
Well,
You know,
Yeah.
my personal recommendation, this is an investment in doing this. You are taking a slight risk relative to snow removal. And again, no way of predicting, you know, it's when the snow flies, if it's on a weekend, it's more expensive to get rid of it than it is during the week. I mean, there are variables there. I honestly, first year in the district, can't tell you, you know, what it's gonna be like. But I would recommend that you take the risk and spend, you know, probably $1,200 to $1,500 on the slice seeding, because you have to do it now. You can't do it in the spring.
Right.
The window of opportunity is now. You can't do it in the spring because it won't germinate fast enough, kids will be playing on it. That would not be a sound investment.
But they're saying they could do it for $750. Are you saying to do other fields with that?
Well, I thought I heard 750 plus
Plus
over
this
here,
one. That's what it's about.
so it would raise the cost to
And that would bring us to
about
roughly
12,
Roughly
12 to
15.
15.
12 to
Yeah.
15.
Could we just say not to
This
exceed
one's a
a
little
certain
more-
number, and let them work it out with the,
The motion that I made last time was to accept a proposal subject to review of the cost by the superintendent, you know. But I think it's reasonable to invest in this. You just know you're taking an exposure on an account,
Mhm.
doesn't have a whole lot of money into it.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Buckley. I move that we accept the proposal as recommended by the superintendent and have him work out the finances between the coaches and the superintendent.
Can we say
Motion by
not
Mr.
to
Buckley.
exceed $1,500? Because I'm
Well,
a little nervous.
I kind of like lay that out there to, let's see what, Dr.
He knows what he does.
Davis had suggested, just that, he would work out the finances and figure out how they can do it. How we're not
Second.
doing
So motion made by Mr. Buckley, seconded by Mr. Robin. Is there any other discussion?
I just want to point out that at our last meeting, we spoke of handing out our MCAS scores because we didn't have money for postage. So I don't know. I mean, I would love to do all the projects that need to be done, but I just want to make that point.
Awesome. Yeah.
I gotta admit, when I came in, initially I thought that this was sort of circumventing the whole budget process in terms of how we do things. But seeing that you said you've raised 17 grand over the last several years, and obviously you probably put that much in sweat equity in on top, I'm sure. And I feel more comfortable getting the dollars of what we're gonna get from AAU, but at this point I'm for it. But I'm a little nervous because it is somewhat of a circumventing of the budget process. But again, we have the revolving account now, so going forward, it's probably better.
Agree.
Any other discussion?
So are we just looking at the seating, or are we looking at the infield as
We're just
well?
looking at the seating right now.
Now, in the spring, is that something that you would come back to us and be able to do in March? Is that infield, or would that have to be put on hold because it needs to sit?
We wouldn't have time to do it
do
in
that
March,
in-
because
Mhm.
if it's a wet spring, you don't want the trucks on the
Right.
fields.
Mhm.
It's just gonna make a mess.
But I think in March, we can plan for next fall.
Following,
Mhm.
right?
And maybe we
Yeah.
need to
Sorry,
look at
we'll
that
look at
through our
netting.
budget process.
Yeah.
The netting
I
and
think if
things
we have,
like
if
that,
it was a
we have
light,
the money.
light snow removal, and we can swing the netting, we can do that in the spring. But I think the materials, I think we look for that in the fall for both
Right.
baseball and softball. So, any other discussion?
No,
Okay.
yes, I just want to say, based on what you said about the budget, I agree with. However, I think that what Dr. Davis proposed about the change in the budget approach, these are the types of things that will have discussion before we even build it up.
Mhm, That's a good point.
So we should catch these things, not only this particular issue, but other issues that haven't been addressed in the past, because we just.
Well, he
don't
was
know
here a
about
year ago.
And I think you were here a year ago, basically to be recognized for all the work that you had done, not only at the high school, but I believe a few years back in Millville and probably other fields. So you've probably given an awful lot of time and effort to all the children of both towns.
Yeah.
There was no discussion last year because there was no discussion on the budget. To be plain and simple. So there was no discussion like this. So from now on, let us take the initiative to drive it back and say, we need to know what you need, we need to know what what we need to know to fix this, whether it's postage for MCAS or appropriate fields, until some kid gets hurt or says, hey, I'm not going to go to BMR playing the rocks over there, I'm going to go to Uxbridge, play on the AstroTurf. I know this is probably superficial and so forth, but that's unfortunately the world we live in today, that those types of things are what parents and children are looking for.
We had a soccer game a few weeks ago almost not being able to play. The official wouldn't let us play because it was a rock that was exposed. We had to dig it up and refill it.
Well, I don't think we ever spent any more money once we put the sewer pipe in there. I don't think we ever even seeded that after that.
I think it was seeded, but it was not properly
Yeah,
seeded.
it was seeded.
Blame it on Brian.
Like-
Moose was seeding.
Like, you bring up a good point, and again, I'm from the outside, I'm not in the school, but the whole planning process seems to be, I've never seen it done this way. I've never seen where there's not a bottoms-up planning process, where you go to each department, find out what you need, pull it up to the department manager, the business center manager, and obviously things are gonna fall out, because you gotta stay within the budget, but I think you find you have a lot of people in the school system who know it's never gonna happen, so they don't even bother putting the time in to put a bottoms-up budget together.
Yeah.
Because they just take last year's budget and they say, that's this year's budget minus 10%.
We'll stay tuned, because I hopefully
Stay tuned. We're gonna
the
fix
year
that.
year
Our
year we're
budget's
going
up to
into
89.
is going to be a bottom up. So,
I mean, you have to have both, obviously, to make them work, but until you understand what the needs are from the people that are involved in
Doing
it,
the job.
it won't work.
agreed. Okay. Any further discussion?
I think we might have a candidate for that.
There you go. There you go. So, all those in favor of the motion made by Mr. Buckley and seconded by Mrs. Robin, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nay. Unanimous.
Can we ask, Mr. Duchamp also got some figures from Mr. Silver on how the fall, particularly how the athletic fees came in, since we're talking about money?
I actually have the athletic fees and the music fees to date. I'll start with athletics. We have a total of 137 participants in athletics this fall. Of the 137, there are still 6 athletes that are on a payment plan. Only a few $100 combined with those 6. But, so to date, we've collected from athletics $25,637.50. There is an outstanding budget, there is outstanding money due from those 6. Our payment plan that came into effect has them paying that up until October 24th. And they've been paying bi-weekly. There's a set amount that we worked out with the athletic director and the superintendent. I don't know if you've ever seen this or received it. I can pass one around if you'd like. But it gives families an opportunity to work within their budget every 2 weeks for each sport and music.
Now,
Sorry.
did you say how what were the enrollments compared to last year?
I would say that football's down about 5 kids due to injuries. Field hockey's at 23. This is just high school students now. We do have, a lot of middle school students playing JV sports. Actually, a couple playing in the varsity soccer team also. But there's 36 football players to date. Some on crutches, some not. 23 in field hockey. This is high school, so that's about average. Actually, up a little. 20 girls soccer players at the high school level. 15 boys cross-country members. That's up from last year. 4 girls cross-country members. For the first time ever, our second year of volleyball, they actually have to make cuts this year. There's 14 girls on the team, and the boys soccer program has 25 high school players. So I would say the numbers are up a little bit in soccer and in volleyball, and everywhere else except for, and boys cross country, they're up. Everywhere else, they're about the same.
Keep the 36 in football, is that varsity, or do you also You don't know?
They,
you know
they,
the
they practice together.
Okay.
Because there's still only, the one head coach and the two assistants, so they do practice together. The JV games that they've had, basically 9th and 10th graders play,
Okay.
so they're all combined. But we do have some freshmen that get a lot of playing time at the varsity level.
At the varsity level, yeah.
Yeah, we have some very talented freshmen that are making an impact. The first home game was last Saturday. Very competitive game, very well. There's another home game this week. We have an opportunity possibly to have another home game. The playoff system in Central Mass football, if we don't make the playoffs, we have just a concession game. We may be able to host it. So there'll be that other game prior to the Thanksgiving Day game. We will be hosting Sutton on Thanksgiving morning. I think it's 10 o'clock.
That's great.
At our school, which would be good. Marching band numbers, they have 99 high school students participating in the marching band. From the marching band, we've collected $11,260. Athletics and music, a total of $36,897.50 in one season.
The 99 only includes high school? Is there
That's
middle
only high
numbers?
school. I don't know what Jan's numbers are, but she collects for any athlete that's playing, any middle school athlete and the marching band athletes. And the updated record for the teams, the football team is 0-4. Boys soccer had a tough tie tonight, but they're 6-3-3. One win away from the tournament. Is that correct, Mr. McNamara? Saturday, win and we're in, Saturday, at noon?
Hold on,
10 o'clock.
You're taking Morgan's thunder.
Don't be
out of
taking
her
Morgan's thunder
report.
Oh, you want me not to say it, Morgan? Give you the updated one? I'll defer to Morgan. I don't want to mess with her. I'll defer to her on the
You
records.
always wanted to be the student rep, and we didn't let you.
That's all I am, yeah, but here.
She babysits, so I'm being nice to her.
If you could ask the AD to kind of put that on a grid for us,
Once I collect all the money, honestly, I'm in charge of the user fees. He really, he just directs everybody to me. So once I have all the money, I'll create a sheet, and I always give a copy to the superintendent.
Okay.
I keep a copy, and I give a copy to the athletic director also. So once it's all done, and I'll have it all up perfectly.
I did appreciate the online registration this year. I think, for me, it was kind of a pain because I only have 1 year left, but if I was going in as a
It's
freshman,
new
that would be
process we
great.
started last year. Mr. Johnson actually set it up, and Mr. Silva just took it over.
Yeah, no, that was great, so.
And we have a ton of events coming up, hopefully. The rain holds off tomorrow night.
Yeah.
It's not looking good.
Oh, really?
But if it does, the band will perform at 6:15 on the backfield, and as soon as that is over, the Blackstone Fire, along with a few town employees, will light the bonfire. Mr. Silver is coordinated with the athletic teams and the band that each group will have a separate booth going with food and hot chocolate and coffee and candy apples. And
Killing it. You're killing it. You're killing it.
You were complaining how hungry you were. You wanted to go. All right.
And she has to cover all the academic stuff.
If I can, the members of the committee, I have to commend Mr. Duchamp, Mr. Dudek, and Mr. Silva. We had that meeting in the early part of the year. How are we going to address the new fees? And we arrived at a strategy to reach out to parents and to offer them, if they were free and reduced, school committee policy stands about the reduction in fees, but also to come up with a payment plan as an alternate. So, the high school administration really thought long and hard, how could they accommodate people, and I think it's worked out.
Along with Mr. Cameron and Ms. LaPorte, we are all together.
Yeah.
So that we're in,
But it
we're on
helped
the same game.
It helped people, so I don't believe, anybody, was denied opportunity to participate. We tried to accommodate everybody. Thank you.
Great, thank you guys.
Sorry, Morgan.
Thank
I know, Mr. Ducharme. I know Thomas can help me out either.
No, you can keep that. I got plenty of copies if somebody wants that. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda, I know you don't want to keep talking about roofs, but tonight we do have something that I've made a decision on, and I want to call it to the attention of the committee. In my memo, we have signed all of the documents with Greenwood Industries to commence work on the Blackstone JFK AFM roof. Met with the architect, the OPM, today because we have to decide on what is the roof color. In the specifications, these are the standard colors for the roof. The architect with their CAD, this is what the gray would look like. This is what the tan would look like. My recommendation is gray.
Gray, yeah.
Yeah.
Coming
Gray
down
is
the
it.
streets of Lincoln and Mendon Street to see this,
No, thank you.
this would not be good. There was a custom color, a copper tan, that we looked at. Unfortunately, it's $65,000 more.
Yeah, gray, love the gray.
Great.
Thank you.
Well done.
Got a little
Beautiful.
paint for that
Beautiful.
copper color.
So, you know, and the roof project, you know, will be staged. Fencing and things will start to appear on campus probably by the end of next week for that. And then we will be moving forward. And as soon as we get the phasing stage, we will then notify all of the parents by email and the staff as to how we're going to proceed in the stages around. And Mrs. Brown will give periodic updates to the community on the website to let people know. One of the concerns, and it was answered today, in order for the contractor to meet the deadline of 75 days, and that clock started as of October 3rd, the roof contractor, given is a fairly large contractor, and they are estimating 25 to 30 men on the job. So it'll be a fairly large crew doing the work to hold that together. So off we go with a gray roof.
Smooth like that?
Yes.
So it kind of looks like it does now, except gray.
Yeah. Yes.
They do that so the snow
The
and
snow will melt.
things will
Correct.
melt right off.
Yeah.
Feel that for
It's
me.
not gonna be any
Yeah.
snow.
It's an adhered roof.
Last time we had all the rocks on
Now, if we
there
get the
that
roof
were
on, there'll be
actually
no snow.
This is
Just
an,
saying.
Let's just get the roof on.
Interesting.
yeah, this is an adhered roof, so you do not need the
rocks.
rock ballast. The rocks will, there's one spot on the roof that they have to get out the rocks that are in there, but for the most part, the rocks are gone off the roof, all right, in terms of that. The next item on the agenda is some good news. Our retiree health insurance, this is the MedX plan that goes along with the retirees that are eligible for Medicare. That enrollment period is always a January 1st date. We were notified by Maya of our rates, and they actually went down. So later on, when I talk about the forecast, you know, surprise, it didn't go up, but it actually went down. As you can, if you look at the backup, you know, that renewal cost, and these are all single plans because Medicare is a single insurance. So if there's a retired couple, the cost on this is actually doubled because we're covering both the employee and the spouse. But it went from $306 and the renewal was $237. And then on the MedX 2 plan, $337 to $263. So, you know, those.
Is this anything behind this? Is it a trend we can hope for our other insurance for the next year? Or?
That was a question I asked, and our insurance advisor, Maya, is committed to getting our rates early to us as best they can. But generally, our renewal date is July 1, and they try to get us data by 3 months out, and we're hoping maybe 4 months out. But so far, the numbers are trending to be down slightly. Right, down slightly.
And this only affects us for half a year this year.
Correct. Well, yeah, this is, in terms of budget, this goes into effect January through June, but it's also from July 1 to December 31st. So it has an impact in this year, and it'll have an impact in next year. Okay? So it is good news in terms of that. The next is the certification of our excess and deficiency account. This is prepared by Mr. Eggert, your fiscal advisor, and then it is submitted to the Department of Revenue, and they make the adjustments to that. And our excess and deficiency account was certified, in the amount of $529,044. And as I say in the memo, you're allowed 5%, so that could have been $1,043,000. So you're at about 50% or 2.5% of E&D, which is dangerously close to where you should be. Anything below that number, given the comment that was made earlier, if anything happens in our budget year, the only available funds you have are these excess and deficiency funds, all right, in terms of that. That's been certified, and that obviously we can incorporate that into our budget plan.
Can I just ask, how does that compare to other towns that you've been working in?
Well, it greatly depends. I've had experience with negative E&D, which is not allowed by law, but I inherited a district that had negative E&D.
Yeah.
And I've worked very hard to get those school districts that I've been superintendent back up to anywhere, in my view, your E&D should be anywhere from 3 to 4.5%, depending on your potential liabilities to do that. Anything below 2.5% is dangerously close to a fiscal calamity for the district. Right?
So
Again,
we're right there.
you're about where you don't particularly want to go below that.
Yep.
All right? Because that's your only available funds for any unanticipated items.
And there's really nothing there to use to help out the budget season next year and moving forward. And you really can't use it that way, you know.
Yeah, it's a savings account. You can't keep taking money out without putting money in. And we'll talk later, if the budget that we have now holds true, there's not going to be any money to put back in there. That's going to be your biggest dilemma in terms of that. The next item is something you'll see every month, not every meeting, but at the first meeting of every month. Just an enrollment update. We can get this out of X2 so that you're able to see what the student enrollment numbers look like. Again, I will kind of, I'm working, had Brad Monroe, he's going to research and do the NESDEC enrollment projections, which have not been done in the district for about the last 5 years, so that we can get ourselves back into that system, so that we're able to look at our enrollment, the town's growth, and have a growth projection model.
How far does that go out?
They can push it out 10 years, but it's really 5. It's really 5. They can push it out 10, but it gets squishy after that. Mainly because you're speculating on births.
You're guessing.
You can, and statistically there is a way to do that, but obviously there are variables and factors in that can contribute to that. One example, in 2008, when the recession hit, one of the things that most suburban districts experienced was a drop in the birth rate. So that's why we're experiencing lower kindergarten classes at this point in time, all right, in terms of that. Okay.
But in short term, that should help us also anticipate, especially kindergarten entrance.
Correct.
So that would
Right.
be, that's always been the.
Correct.
Chop it up.
And it'll also get us back into collecting the town clerk's census data and looking at trends rather than kind of guessing at what is out there. Okay. The next couple of items are on Friday of this week. We have a second professional development day. I just want to share with you that I will be doing 2 workshops on that day on educator evaluation, one for the new teachers in the morning and one for the teachers that are going on cycle this year. And we'll be doing the orientation and the workshop materials. This normally would be something that the assistant superintendent would take on, but it needs to be done. And I spent last year doing it for Teachers 21, so I had all of the material. Mr. Hawhey has put together the workshop for our paraprofessionals on that day and providing support for them. And then the 2 elementary principals have put together the workshop around the literacy program, as well as some other programs at the elementary level. The secretaries normally would have engaged in some kind of professional development activity. We did not plan, did not have a program, and so I've notified the support staff that the secretaries will just be reporting to work and be working on that day in their offices and getting caught up. The nurses are going to a district workshop, which is going to be held over in Bellingham for school nurses. There's a consortium that we belong to. I have not been able to attend any of the meetings, but the member districts all belong, and they have this common day, the Friday before Columbus Day weekend. So our nurses will be going over to join about another 30 nurses to talk about their issues and changes at the thing. Mr. Cameron is going to continue to do the work here at the middle school with his curriculum mapping. He did send me something, and I did not include it in the packet, but he started that work on the first professional development day, and he's going to do it. In addition, at the high school, Mr. Dudak is doing the work, preliminary work for the NEASC accreditation visit, and that was part of the plan, that teachers will be engaged at the high school in starting some of the NEASC accreditation work to do that. So I'm very pleased. A number of people have stepped up to coordinate and take on professional development activities that normally would have been handled by the assistant superintendent. So pleased with that, and thank them very much.
Appreciate
Okay. The next item on the agenda, Mr. Chairman, is just the committee may recall, there were a couple of cleanup items on from the last teachers' negotiation. One was language relative to an incentive for retirement that was discussed. It was not in the packet on the teacher's contract, but it was in the notes, and as you recall, people said, yes, we did talk about that. So there's a memorandum of understanding that I signed with Mr. Juba, the president of the Teachers Association. The only modification I made to that, since I talked to the committee, was that given the first year, that teachers would have until Friday to notify us for this year, since they couldn't, it wasn't language that was approved back in September. And then going forward, the date of September 10th, which would give them about a week after school starts to turn that letter in. Again, it's only a notice of intent to retire. It doesn't guarantee that they will retire, and they would be eligible for that. The second item deals with some language at the high school, which really is more of an interpretation of an existing article on the advisory period, the way it rotates, that some teachers would be losing a piece of their prep period. There's a provision in the contract when that happens under Article 7, Article 8 rather, Section B, to be compensated at the rate of $21, I think, for that time. And again, it's not a new article, but it's a clarification of that. The last item was that in the Appendix B, when those numbers were done, a couple, as you can see them, remained the same. They should have been adjusted going forward. So it's just a computational correction. So those are three items. I would recommend the school committee accept the language in Article 15, Section F, the language in Article 8, Section B, and Appendix B, extracurriculum stipends, subject to the approval by the Blackstone Millville Regional District Educators Association. They're planning to take a vote on these things on Friday.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
Motion is read by Mrs. Robinson.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Monaco. Any discussion?
Just remember, if you have a spouse that's in the union, you can't vote.
Any union?
No, just this
I'm
union.
clear. I don't have
know.
a spousal leave.
I don't think I do.
Yeah,
I don't think I do.
No, you're not. Your support staff. It's
All right,
Brian.
Thanks.
I have my microphone off.
Yes.
Okay.
It's fine. You just
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Just a point on that.
I'm sorry?
Just a point on that. Is that we can't vote, because we can sign the contract, and we vote on the contract, even
Yeah.
though if we just can't negotiate.
Well, you should not vote because you have a immediate family member. Okay? You can sign the contract as a representative of the committee because that's an act of the committee.
Okay.
Got it? It's like when we checked on Wendy, signing the warrants. The actual signature is a ministerial act. It's not a conflict act. So the conflict would be signing a warrant if a member of your immediate family was receiving reimbursement.
You've got my wheels
Would
spinning
be
now.
okay with my brother being a teacher? Immediate family.
Well, we have to
Does he
do
live
that
with you?
vote.
Yeah.
I didn't vote.
Thank you. The record should show that 2 people abstained.
I
Thank
think
you.
Mike too.
Now I have a conflict because I have a sister-in-law.
No,
Nope.
that's,
Okay, I'm
That's
okay.
okay.
Vote as a-
You're off the hook.
When we checked into it.
But then,
I voted yes.
but you can't be in the negotiation.
that's your immediate
can't
side, your
negotiate.
side.
Can't negotiate.
Yeah, the email
This is
says
gonna say.
said immediate,
He's looking.
but Mike's
Right.
always been
Since
told.
we're taking a break, can I go back to the weather and give you a
He
forecast?
can't.
What,
I think
tomorrow?
already,
Yeah.
Members of the committee, if I can,
Is he coming? He's coming, is he?
the clarification in Chapter 268A, employee and his spouse and their parents, children, brothers, and sisters. All right? So it's a spouse, any parent, any children, or brothers and sisters. Those are the ones that you,
Just the two.
brothers or sisters, yes. Thank you for catching that
More child.
Okay.
Okay.
at this point. Thank you.
By the way, it's gonna rain.
The next item.
What Amy said.
As I promised the committee, I will be presenting to the committee every quarter a status report on the budget, projecting your expenses and your revenues. Because in building your budget, you have the expenses, but you also have to be concerned about the revenues. Because if we project a revenue and that revenue is not coming in, that creates a revenue shortfall. And the same with expenses. If we're exceeding our budget, we need to look at that. So I worked, and I have to, Donna Scungio, she had to input all of the teacher salaries because of the new teacher contract, and we had to project that and encumber that. We also had almost 40 new people join the district, so it took quite a while, to get all of that information in. But to the best of our ability, she has proofed those numbers, so we're dealing with, clear numbers in terms of our known staff, their current salaries based on the collective bargaining agreement. That's not to say that could change during the year if for any reason somebody were to leave, resign. That obviously would create a different set of circumstances with that. In working with the budget, I took the position that I wanted to encumber in our thinking monies that we knew we were going to spend. For example, encumber all of the money for electricity, encumber all of the money for oil and gas. We know we're going to put the lights on, we know we're going to pay the phone bill. I'm not saying that number may change, but for the purpose of this exercise, we are assuming that we're going to spend all of that money. We'll refine it as we move further into the fiscal year, but it gives us a better sense of what it is. As we discussed earlier, like snow removal, right? I anticipate we're going to spend money on snow removal. This is New England. You spend money on snow, you're going to have to buy salt and sand. It is part of our reality at this point. I then met with Dr. Haughey to really talk about special education. And I asked him to go back and double-check all of the IEPs to bring us up to date on all of our liabilities in terms of what are we committed to and project that right through the end of the current fiscal year. Again, that could change. But the reality is we have to start with that assumption that if we have a student in placement, they're going to stay in placement, we're going to transport them, those two numbers should be fully encumbered in terms of that. And in the case of special education, there were some summer programs, there were some items that were in IEPs that were not accounted for in some of the supply and material accounts. I just said, whatever we've agreed to do, we have to make sure that at this point we're saying it. So, if you will, I asked him to give me the worst-case scenario and assume what's there and deal with it. I had to approve an additional aid in special education at the JFK for a program that we created with a teacher, but we did not anticipate the number of children that are now in the program, and we need an aid. So that added another $16,000, because when they projected the program, they thought they were going to have maybe 2 to 3 students. They're up to 4 to 5, and it's the population that does require an aid. They tried rotating people in to fill it. You can't do that. They need a consistent person to kind of deal with that. All right. and also looking at circuit breaker in terms of that. We are going to be audited this year for our circuit breaker submittals for last year. So we will know what the number is because we're going to be audited in early November. And I had a meeting with Dr. Hahi and Donna Scungio to kind of make sure that all of our paperwork is fully accounted. So anything that we turned in, we have backup data when they come for the audit so that they can look at that data. The good news is that the circuit breaker amount that's in the budget, the state budget, we fully anticipate that the state may meet its obligation of 75%. When you built your budget last year, that number was somewhere around 60%. So I'm going to tell you in a minute that we anticipate maybe receiving an additional $75,000 to $80,000 in circuit breaker this year, all right, based on the information that we got from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. So, with that said, looking at the printouts, and if you have it up on your computer, hopefully the numbers that are in parentheses are negative numbers, or if you got it in colored version, if it's red, that's a negative number relative to the expenses and in terms of where we are. The first couple of pages walk us through the regular education budget relative to our cost. And again, looking at some of the numbers, I'm assuming that we're going to spend those funds and deal with that. I must tell you that I met with my custodians that drive your plows. I'm doing snow. That is, I have to call the men out to plow the regional, the middle, and high school. Mr. Johnson did it last year. He's no longer here. And there's nobody to delegate that to, all right? But met with the custodians that are on our plow team to go over that. The dilemma that I have is that there's money in the snow removal budget, but the practice was to require the men when they plow to take comp time. That's not viable. That's not viable, to be honest. We don't have an overabundance of custodians, and to tell that somebody's going to plow and then not work 8 hours because they got 8 hours comp, in some cases that leaves nobody in the building. So I became aware of that when I met with my custodians last week, and need to tell you that that's a concern that I have. Removing snow and ice is a safety issue, and the town does it at Blackstone and Millville elementaries, but we're responsible for doing it at the middle school and high school. If we can do it during regular work hours with our groundskeeper, keeping up with it, that's on straight time. But many times it requires putting additional men on the equipment. We have 3 pieces of equipment, and my view is you use all pieces of equipment to get it done so it's safe for everybody to be there. So I have a concern about that. All right.
Are you concerned about our employees doing it? Is that something that we should look at contracting?
I'm concerned that we didn't budget enough overtime to cover it, Brian.
Okay.
That's what I'm concerned about.
Is there anyone that could be considered that it wouldn't require overtime?
They all work Monday through Friday. And if you call them in, you're going to have to call them in at 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning so that we can have school. And you only have one head custodian in the building. So if Scott and Willie are out plowing, I need them here at the building because somebody's got to then shovel off the walkways, which you can't plow, or use the snow blower to get the building ready. All right, and you can't send them home at the end of 8 hours. It's just people follow.
Yeah.
The buildings need to be staffed. It's not because the kids are here. All right. And one thing you know about snow and ice, if we have school, they track a lot of snow and ice in. So on a maintenance level, the night crew, needs to do a lot more cleanup. It's just not a good strategy to think that you can get away with that.
So in other districts that you've been in,
Pay them overtime.
it's the custodians that take care of the snow.
Well, in regional schools, when I was at King Philip, my custodial staff, we had equipment and we had groundskeeper and other custodians that were licensed to operate the equipment, and they did it on overtime.
Okay.
So that's what I'm calling to your attention. Right? And again, it costs more if it's on the weekends, because by contract, if it's a Saturday, it's time and a half, and it's a Sunday, it's double time. All right? Which, if you use comp, then you're doubling the comp. We have people that have banked 100 hours of comp time.
Ludicrous.
You can't, when you don't, it's not like you have a redundancy of crew to do that. It's not a good strategy to do that. So, anyway, it's a concern, but I have not addressed it here, because I really just had that conversation with them a week ago. So, the regular budget, and another big account that shows a balance on the third page, the insurance account right now is showing a balance of 237, and about 70,000 of that is the savings we got on the Medicare, the MedEx payments. Okay, it's pretty significant. All right, pretty significant at this point.
And it says we budgeted for $100K for the deductible reimbursement.
Yes, that has not been paid yet, but so we have that to.
Was that last year's, maybe?
It's paid out of this year. People under your agreement can turn in their deductibles to us by the end of August, and then we reimburse them for that out
So
of this
next
year's.
year's budget
And next year's will be
will be
reduced,
lower.
because we reduced that.
We reduced that number, but that was as of July.
Whatever the contract limit is, we've accounted for that, all right? So the health budget
submitting for
includes
that.
100K for health insurance reimbursement, and we haven't finished those yet,
Right, you're right.
all right?
So do we have?
And we saved 115 on the MedEx, all right, for the payments, and we have some surplus in the dental account, we have some life insurance money, and our workers' comp is a savings, all right? So, the regular budget at this point looks good, but I need to tell you that 413,000 includes the 120,000 you're not paying an assistant superintendent, and the 27,000 that you're saving in the contract that I have as your interim superintendent. So when you look at those numbers, basically 150 of that is your transition, because you don't have a position filled to do it.
But this is our projected balance for the fiscal
End of the
year,
year.
Right.
as
But,
of October.
but 150 of that is coming from positions at
That
the
are
center.
not-
So we'd be in real trouble.
Mhm. Right. So, people say, well, why did we end up with so much? The classroom teaching positions, some of that is the replacement of staff that left, retired, and the replacement people coming in. We also found in the budget a position of $42,000 that was in the budget, but not filled and not
What position?
Was there a
claimed.
title to that?
Not claimed.
Was there a title to that?
It was identified for the middle school. Mhm. Okay? But we never advertised for it, and Mr. Cameron didn't know anything about it. So there was a 42,000 bump there, improving the numbers. Okay? However, let's move on to the last page.
I ask one question?
Mhm.
Many years ago, when, I'm going back quite a ways now, probably before this building was open, town of Blackstone actually provided some snow removal work for the district-owned properties.
Yes.
It was just one piece of property, the 175 Lincoln Street. Would it be worth our while to go and have conversation with the Blackstone town officials and anything that they could assist us in the regional properties? Would potentially to save us some money in a very tight budget year, obviously. I know they haven't budgeted for it either, but I'm just wondering, they have to do the Lincoln Street, the complex. Millville does its thing over there too. I'm just wondering that, and the reason there was a deal struck at that time was because of finances. That the town had the equipment, and this was just one less burden that was on the school district in tough times, probably post 2.5 and prior to 2003 when this opened. Just throwing that out.
I think they were doing this building when it first opened. I think it happened right after that.
My understanding
Some pulled
of
out.
talking with the custodians that have been plowing for several years, that we pay Blackstone because we buy our sand and salt from them.
Right.
Okay? And they load it onto our trucks, but we pay for it. They have a log, they sign down at the DPW barn, and there's a payment made. It is true that if we get an inordinate amount of snow, they help us out with, because they have a bigger payload or lift to do that. There have been times, and you probably, as members of the committee, know more about it than I do, when they've had to actually come in and assist in removing snow from the roof, which meant snow was taken off the roof, but then a payloader had to dig it up, and we have a very small John Deere tractor with a front-end loader, but it's certainly not capable of doing that. So there's been that level of cooperation with the Blackstone DPW to do that, but I can explore that with the town administrator and talk about it.
So you're saying that there might be a savings if we give them the whole ball of wax?
Well, I'm just saying that right now, obviously, we're very close to the line here.
Yeah.
And you can't predict this.
Yeah.
They have the expertise and obviously the equipment. I'm not saying that they would do it for free, but maybe that there's something that they could help us out with, that, if they can get the parking lots open and the driveways open, then we can certainly kind of tidy up, and maybe we don't have to bring the guy in at 4 in the morning. Maybe we can come in at 6 and still be able to get this done. Just thinking
Worth
out
the
loud.
conversation.
It's definitely worth the conversation.
Especially on the weekends where it's double time and things like that, and
Well, it's
during
double
the
time
day,
for
they
them,
might.
too.
It's double time for them, but it might be a little bit of a savings if,
But they pull in outside
Right, but they're
people,
out anyway.
and I don't know how
I'm
much they
more than
pay
I'm
the
more than
outside
willing
people.
to contact the town administrator and deal with that.
as long as we can get it, obviously understand that they're gonna come here and get us ready to open, and not have us last after the parking shop area.
Yeah,
So.
Well,
that's true, too.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's worth a conversation, but I think, clearly,
They probably could get more now than other places, for sure.
paying a town because they have the equipment is better than even us buying some of the equipment, because I did my inspection of the 3 vehicles that we have for plowing here. We have a big Ford truck, a 650, big dump truck, that's principally used for plowing and sanding, which was purchased when this building opened. And, clearly, that body, the truck body with the salt and sand is starting to show some rust and corrosion. The 350, which is the blue flatbed truck, I approved some welding on it to hold it together. That has very serious concerns for me as to whether or not that would make another heavy winter. A year ago, there was a pickup truck purchase with a plow. That was not used last year to plow, and I don't have the answer to it. I was told it was not used for plowing. I've authorized that vehicle will be used for plowing, because again, we need to mobilize our crew, and we need to use all of the pieces of equipment that we can. Given the condition of that 350 truck, that would be a big concern to me, to do that. And so I'm more than willing to explore that.
When we authorized the purchase of that truck last year, we were putting that 350 to bed. I understood that it was not able to be used for plowing
I think what they
anymore.
wound up doing is, I think they took the pickup body off of it and made it a flatbed, and then there was some interest to keep it going because that type of thing without the sides, it would allow for, the district to have something to move equipment around and so forth, so.
The body's been welded. If you know anything about a stake body truck, you put a patch on it. If you plow that into a lot of snow or ice, that may structurally take that truck out. That's my concern. But right now, the engine runs fine, the transmission is good, the body is not good, So that equipment, but yes, we will be using 3 pieces of equipment. We will be using the pickup truck. It's a lighter vehicle, but again, it also can get in closer to the buildings. Again, it always depends on how much snow as to what you can do to deal with that, all right? The next picture is the special ed budget. I have very, very, very serious concerns about the underfunding of special education for this year. And again, special education can change tomorrow. And certainly the numbers, for substitutes and speech and language, that doesn't concern me. The teacher aides, 16 aid is due, to needing an additional aid, but there was also a summer program that was run, and there wasn't enough money in the grant to cover the aides, all of the aides for that program. 10,000, so like 26,000 of that, one could say was kind of unanticipated. But then when you start getting down to the supply account, again, my question to Dr. Hahi was, well, what do we own in IEPs? We have a hearing impaired child that we committed to buying a device that's in the IEP. It was, $1,500. You had to buy that. We committed to it. And the supplies, were totally inadequately funded based on the liability in terms of that. But the big one is tuition. This account was underfunded.
And we didn't have any surprise kids. These were
These
kids
are
that-
not, at this point in time, these were known cases and situations in terms of that. But the good news, as I said, is that the circuit breaker money looks like it'll come in at 75%, so we can probably safely say there's an $80,000 swing there. But that doesn't take away from, when you add up all of these numbers, it's a negative 472. So let's round numbers, it's $400,000 delta that we're stuck with in this budget, which, at this point, these were not unknowns, they were known, and they were not adequately budgeted in your budget to do that. And this is critical. When we do budgeting, we budget for what we know, and so that we're identifying this. And this is what I referred to earlier, this vacuum of not knowing what the budget numbers were until after the fact. And then I was here in August and met with Dr. Hahi because of my background in SPED, and said, we've got to look at this, and that's when these numbers started to pop out. So your budget is capable of ending the year in the black, barely, but that's not filling the assistant superintendent's position. That's not filling the assistant superintendent's position, is 120 of that. All right, so this budget right now, I would say has to be watched very closely in terms of any changes. There's no wiggle room in this budget, absolutely none. And it's a deeper hole going towards next year. Now, there are some students in SPED that are turning 22. That will mitigate some of that. That will not be in our budget next year. But we're starting, if in fact we have to start the SPED budget at a higher level based on our commitments, we have some catching up to do in this budget, just to stay where we should. Not adding any new, it's just maintaining and meeting our liabilities. All right?
But the reality is, as kids age out, we could have other kids coming in.
And there's always the phone call from a principal or Dr. Hahi saying, you know, a family has moved into town, and we could have other liabilities, yes. All right, yes, to do that, all right? So, I call this to your attention. I don't have a strategy of how to address it, other than to make you aware of it, and that I will continue to look very closely, but I need the committee to understand, we don't have funds, you know, to take on any surprises. If the committee recalls, the first month I was here, we were scrambling to find the money for the literacy program, all right? And where was it? And we took it out of a revolving account to get that going, all right? To get that going. So I'm very concerned about it, very concerned about it. And it has ramifications for this year, because if your budget's ending without putting money into E&D, you took over $600,000 out of E&D last year to offset your budget. My delta on this right now is about an $800,000 swing, $20 million budget. It's up several percent without doing anything, just maintaining, you know, these known deficits to kind of deal with it. Right. I've been honest with my administrators. They have not seen these spreadsheets. I will give them to them next week. All right. Obviously, Dr. Hahi is he helped prepare these numbers, so he knows the situation that we're in. So my recommendation is that I monitor this and bring it to your attention as soon as possible if there's changes as we proceed. So.
Can we get the expense ledger printed off
Sure.
for members?
The only thing on, because this budget, you'd want to see the encumbrance column and the
Yep.
balance, and the projected balance.
Yeah, just like
Yeah.
like this, pretty much the standard. We used to get those like probably monthly.
Yeah.
Be nice to see it after one quarter.
Yeah.
I mean, this gives us a real good snapshot of it. So if we go back to the 9,000 account tuition,
Yep.
so we obviously missed one or two perhaps with that number by the looks.
Probably closer to 2.5 kids.
Okay, and they were existing, right? They were-
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did we lose it? Can you just check with Dr. Hahi and see if, did any age out this past year? Or?
We have one aging out in another couple of weeks.
Okay.
But that was accounted for.
I believe it was, yeah.
That's accounted for.
But I thought there was one other, but,
Yeah.
but that could just be,
There's one aging out at the end of this year. Won't be in next year's budget.
right.
Yep.
And that's an out-of-district one too, right?
Yes. And right now, I did not have this for you because it's a little soft until I go over it with Mr. Eggert next time he comes in. But you know, we are getting the Commonwealth changed the Chapter 70. We get that money now monthly, not quarterly. So we're actually getting money in at the start of every month for Chapter 70, and you know, some of our revenue numbers are holding true. We projected in athletic fees 45,000, and you've picked up, you know, well over a third just in the fall season. But it is one of the expensive seasons. But it looks like we're on track to make that number with winter and spring sports. The music program has a winter season, so it's more than likely that we'll meet, you know, that number as well. You know, the Medicaid reimbursement numbers look like they'll be coming in.
Is there any picture of the before and after school?
That I do not. Right now, it is not running. It's not running in the black. Right. But the program really needs September and October to kind of solidify the numbers. There were inquiries from people that were using another provider, but they had to give a 30-day notice to leave. So we'll know on November 1 what our numbers are going to be, for that program. But potentially that could also be a negative. But I'm not including that at this point.
And for our next meeting with the Board of Selectmen are going to be here from both towns, and the FinCom's are going to be here from both towns, would we prepare something similar to this to show them?
I think in the name of transparency,
Yep.
I think people need to see, where are we?
Yeah.
With the money
Yep.
that's already been budgeted.
Good.
In terms of where we are, how close, how dangerously close we are. And it's not so much worrying about finishing this year, it's that E&D.
Mm-hmm.
It's that swing you're not going to have for offsetting your budget next year. That's my biggest concern. And the fact that what's holding this number up is close to 150,000 of positions you're not filling in the central office. All right? So my sense, Mr. Chairman, the pleasure of the committee is for me to kind of give you this detail on a quarterly basis, but on a monthly basis, give you an update.
That's
Right?
good.
But I agree. I think this information should be shared
Right.
so people
agree.
understand.
I agree.
Where's the detail? When somebody says, "Why aren't you paying for that? Why aren't you doing that?" We're not sitting on a lot of cash at this point.
Do we know where the circuit breaker sits today? What's the circuit breaker number, and how much have we applied to the fiscal 14?
Our net claim is 387,183, with anticipating the 378, and our revenue projection on that was 300,000. So the delta on that is 87,000. All right? We anticipated, let me get the number right, circuit breaker, 300,000, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, but we're having an audit, so.
Right.
So I feel comfortable using the number 80,000 at this point to pull that off. All right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll also know school choice probably in another month or two of how many we're in, how many are out. You took an estimate on your revenue of receiving $244,000 in school choice reimbursement. So that's the net of in and out. And I've got to look at that when those numbers come in. We've picked up some students from a couple of towns, but we also have students in other towns. So we have to look at that.
All right.
All right?
Anything else?
All right.
That's enough. Okay, public forum, seeing no one, I will move forward. Report of the student representatives.
We're waiting for
I
you,
know,
Morgan. We're
this is
waiting.
the good stuff coming now.
Well, Mr.
Again,
Ducharme
Thomas.
pretty much, covered most of it.
We already forgot what he said.
World.
So, last Friday, the night games were scheduled, and unfortunately, it poured the entire day, so I know teammates were in class giving each other the eyes, like, it's gonna get canceled, and the announcement was made, and we went outside, and our field was underwater. So the game was rescheduled for Tuesday night, which unfortunately band had practice, so those members couldn't come support us. But other than that, there was a lot of people at the night game. It was another great success for both sports teams. The soccer team did a 50-50. Well, we were supposed to do a 50-50, but I guess our JV girls forgot. And the boys sold a lot of snacks, candy, hot chocolate, burgers, pizza. So they had it all last night. Both teams did end up losing to Nipmuc 3-1. But for the girls, it was an improvement because we got crushed when we played them the first time, and it was a really well-played game. And the boys, supporting the boys yesterday, were crazy. So the boys' record now is 6-3-3, and they're one game from playoffs, and they're hoping to take playoffs this weekend at the homecoming game. And girls are 7-5, so we're 2 games away. and we're also hoping to be one win away by Saturday at the homecoming games. The first football game was last Saturday. I was there. I sang the national anthem for them. They did the Unibank, came and did the coin toss, and so we did end up losing. However, it was a hard-fought game. We did really well. It went back and forth pretty much till the end, till the fourth quarter. So it was a good turnout too of people. The band performed at halftime, so we got to see their show performance. The bonfire. This is tomorrow. Obviously, it's supposed to rain. It said occasional showers, so we're kind of praying. And there are all the sports teams is kind of showcased at the bonfire, so we all get to sell different items, and they made sure that no team was selling the same thing. So caramel apples, popcorn, hot chocolate, student council selling T-shirts that say "Keep Calm and Charge On," baked goods and pizza. So there'll be plenty of games too for little kids to participate in. That our class, right, senior class.
Yeah, we actually are, I'll explain that. We changed a little bit.
So the senior class will be playing games with all the younger kids. Then we have the homecoming dance, obviously Friday, which is 7 to 10 this year instead of 6 to 10. So it's an hour shorter. Game Saturday, the boys soccer team will play at 10, field hockey plays at 11, girls varsity soccer will play at 12, and then boys, the football team will play at 2. And then there's also a show for the band that day. And the last thing going on is NHS has raffles going on, which we actually have been selling them in school all week. If you've been at the high school, they're in the office. They're autumn-themed baskets. There's actually 2 of them. One's larger than the other. And the organization actually came together really well because we did them last year, and the baskets are beautiful. Every single person in the committee brought in an item for the basket. So there's decorations, table placements, candles, and so we're going to have it at the bonfire. There'll be a table for that too, and we're going to announce it Friday after the professional day at the high school. But otherwise, that's pretty much what's going on right now.
What's that money going towards for the baskets? Is it just towards NHS? Okay. I wasn't sure about that. All right. Well, for a band, we have had 3 shows so far, and we were doing fairly well, better than we thought we were going to be doing at this time with all the problems we have with the mosquitoes and everything. But luckily, we're back outside. Our home show went well. We're so thankful that Medway let us use their fields when we didn't have one. And then actually this weekend too, because the high school's so busy with homecoming, Dartmouth High School is letting us use their high school to practice all day, so we can have practice shows. So we're thankful that they're letting us do that too, and at no cost to us actually. So we're really happy that they let us do that. We have our finals trip. Well, not our finals trip for band on October 26th. We're going to Towson University in Maryland and performing at the Bands of America Regional Championships for the eastern part of the country. And I, along with another senior, Alex McIsaac, go to a Regional Student Advisory Council. They're bi-monthly meetings in Hudson, and it's Central Mass. And there's one for Western Mass, Eastern Mass, and there's one other one I can't think of. And then we have delegates who go to the State Student Advisory Council, and they have one delegate who goes to the Board of Education. And the big thing this year that I'm going to bring up to the school next week is digital literacy. And one thing they're trying to do for the month of October is it's this thing called the speed test, where the Board of Education is looking to find out what internet capacity every school in the state has. So they're asking about 10 people about 3 to 4 times a day to go on. It's a minute-long test. You just go onto the website, click take the speed test, and it just tests your internet for a minute. And then 30 seconds of something and 30 seconds of another thing. I can't remember what that was. But it just tests that.
And download.
Oh, yes, upload. Thank you. Upload and download. I knew it was something simple like that.
Hope they're doing that.
Yes, we all are.
Yeah, it's
Yes, we all are.
a big thing that they're trying to push this year. The big thing about the meeting this year, though, was, like I said, digital literacy. And I thought it was interesting to find out that we are actually further ahead than a lot of schools and technology-wise. a lot of schools I found out don't have Wi-Fi that they have access to. When I told them that we had smart boards in almost every room in our middle school and high school, and then a lot of the elementary school, they were like dumbfounded that we had all these smart boards, because like big schools that are fairly new were like, oh, we only have 2 smart boards in our whole school and we never use them. And we were just kind of in shock about that, because we use them every day in class and I don't know what we do without them. But that's pretty much what I've been doing. So next week I'm going to talk to the technology director and Mr. Dudek and try and get certain technology classes like the graphics and Photoshop classes just every day to try and do this, because it's only for the month of October, so they're trying to get as many tests as they can from each school just to really get a good look at it. So.
Good. Good job.
Questions from the committee?
Wow, you're
What's
saying
going to happen if it rains for the bonfire? Is there a plan B?
I honestly
no
don't
idea.
think
That's,
there's a plan B.
Mr. Ducharme and Mr. Dudek have all the plans for that. That's
Just wondering if there was a
Yeah,
rain
yeah.
date.
Well, I know it was like, Principals Council talks about it because that's where the idea was actually first brought up last year, is when it really came together. And so when we talked about it, I guess we pretty much just prayed for no rain, because once that wood is all, if it rains tomorrow, there's no, it's gone.
I don't know if any of you've seen that pile of wood, but that's I don't know how they're going to do that, but that's a lot of wood.
Gasoline.
I know.
I saw that and I was very surprised.
I
at how
hope
big
that they
was.
still have it, because it's like, that's something that brings the whole community together, like not just the high school, it's like high school, middle school, elementary school, families, and it's awesome to see people that you don't see all the time, like come out to like support BMI.
I think if it rains, they might just push it. I know last year their idea was to have it the night before the Thanksgiving football game, so I don't know if they'll wait to push it back till then, or if they'll, I know that was something that Mr. Ducharme had said last year, that he wanted to have it before our first Thanksgiving football game, so.
Because we
We'll
did
see.
decide to push
Hopefully
it
it
up this
doesn't
year.
rain.
We actually
Yeah.
talked about that, because we
Hopefully it doesn't
decided
rain.
like, a lot of other schools do it like their homecoming weekend, so instead of doing it in like late November when it's really cold, that's why we pushed it up.
Any other questions?
No rain.
Awesome. Great job, you guys.
Yeah, great job.
Appointments.
Just an update on the assistant superintendent's position. I'm now 0 for 11, asking people to consider
Are we
coming.
taking it personally?
No, I'm envious of some of my colleagues that aren't working
Yeah.
at this point, but I've exhausted my network. I keep inquiring. I do have a board meeting tomorrow, and I will inquire with my colleagues on the BICO board. What I have done is I have approached Brad Monroe to pick up some additional projects based on, his contract with the district, so I will be asking him to do some projects which he and I will negotiate a fee for in order to make those things happen, to deal with it. But it's a position, in order for it to be helpful to the district, it really is a position that somebody has to have had experience in. There's just not enough capacity to bring somebody in totally novice and try to build it, with them. So I haven't totally given up, but I'm accepting the reality of limitations. And I do have to commend Tina Poria, who's the clerk for the curriculum in the office. She has stepped up with a lot of support for things that I've picked up and have asked her to follow up on, particularly some of the grants and some of the information and doing things, and she's been a tremendous support, and I appreciate it to do that. But, yes. So I am working 5 days a week. I've shared that with the chairman.
Don't burn out.
Fitting other things around it in order to, stay on top of things at this point. The other thing, Mr. Chairman, under this, you may want to take a motion on your search consultant.
Yeah.
So, looking for a motion.
I'll move that we appoint NESDEC as the superintendent search consultant to help us find the next superintendent of schools.
Motion made by Mr. Buckley. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Robin. Any other discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nays? Unanimous.
Mr. Chairman, I will contact NASDAQ and set up a meeting with Dr. Betancourt and review the protocol.
And then, do you want-
Contact MASC to.
Yes.
Do you want us to start doing some job description review, or do you want us to wait for NASDAQ?
My suggestion, Mr. Chairman, might be that the committee may want to consider, having 2 members of the committee be a superintendent search subcommittee that can maybe do some of that work and bring it back to the full committee for discussion. And I'm going to say, this would be a leadership through the entire process of working on this superintendent search. Not that the full committee is not engaged, but I think it would be productive so that the NASDAQ people could come down. Maybe what I'm envisioning here is if people were available late afternoon rather than at night, to meet with them and go over and then be able to report back on timeline, and particularly revising the position description and then talking about the recruitment strategy.
We can put some time in.
So that would be my recommendation to you.
Okay. Okay, moving forward, subcommittee reports. Strategic planning?
Yeah, we still have nothing new on strategic plan. I think we need to set up some time for that in facilities because, I thought we were gonna have some workshop time before our meetings, but that's all being scheduled for budget and everything else. That's not gonna change, so we're gonna have to find some other time to get together and do that work. So we haven't done that yet.
Regional agreement?
Just waiting for the numbers to come in for NASDAQ, and then we're gonna have a conversation about what the enrollment looks like, and then hopefully have a discussion with the entire committee as to where we're headed.
Is there a time frame on
Mr. Monroe is going to be putting that together. Unfortunately, there aren't, because it wasn't done for 5 years, he's got to go back and get a lot more historical data to build it out. So we're hoping that that can be done, by the end of the month.
All right.
So I would not anticipate NASDAQ being able to turn us around a report until the beginning of November.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
Public relations. Mr. Buckley and myself.
How's it going?
It's going pretty good.
Good. Nothing really new to report, I don't think, in that area. We probably, as we move forward into this budget session, I think that some of that will need to get fleshed out in that. But however, the school has been doing a pretty good job about using social media to get the information out about what was the reading program in the
Raising the Roof.
Raising the Roof, which was pretty good. If you happen to see those pictures with all the youngsters with their construction hats on out there at AFM and JFK, you're going to read as many books as to cover that roof, and hopefully do that before their new roof gets put on. So that's pretty good. And compliments to Mrs. Brown and the staff down there for what a great job that is. Other than that, that's about it, Mr. Chairman.
And I think within that same respect, I think we got to pick probably 3 or 4 things that we want to continue to highlight. I know we talked about when the foundations, the kindergarten teachers were here, we talked about, hey, it'd be great if we can video a lesson or whatnot. So hopefully we can connect with committee's feedback around. Obviously, they're doing a great job in social media, but are there some specific targeted things that we want to continue to highlight? So I'll be looking for committee members to kind of come up with some ideas around that.
Could I make one suggestion around that? What I really find valuable is when the kids come in. And if we can do more of that this year, I think every time we do it, it seems like we're all re-enthused about why we sit here and sometimes have very late meetings and talk about what we talk about. So if we can start to encourage that, and certainly with the relationships that you're building, with the building principals, to encourage that through them, I think that'd be great to do. Not every meeting, but at least, every month or two.
Yeah. Okay. Budget. We're going to be having our first ad hoc meeting tomorrow night. We're going to generate at least 10 or 12 community members between Millville and Blackstone. I think, the first meeting is going to be getting feedback from them and presenting some of the initial data that we have, particularly around the budget message, and getting feedback from them about what they want, in terms of differently in the process. So I hope that we can continue to generate some community members across the board, from people that are seniors all the way down to parents. So
And folks that are seeing this at home or on cable replay, if you have some interest, please, contact the superintendent's office or the chair. We'd like to see a balanced view from both towns. So whether you have children in the system, whether you're a property owner, whether you're a senior, it's all very important. We're trying to be as transparent with this as possible, trying to make be able to share the information that we're working with everyone. So, especially folks that maybe are interested in from the parents groups from both towns, or from all three schools.
And that meeting is what, 17th at 6?
Yep,
Right
it'll be 6 to 7:30, one Thursday a month, usually the third Thursday a month through January, February. So looking at 4 or 5 meetings. And then the other thing with that is we'll have, like I said, we'll have our next meeting here. We're having the Board of Selectmen and the FinCom. It'll probably be a one-item agenda, and we will be live on TV. So we'll have to figure out how we arrange, get everyone in here. And then facilities, Brian, you guys still gonna come up with?
Actually, we got the guys starting on the roof this week, so.
You did it.
Credit where credit is due.
Nice job.
You get a future in politics, I'm telling you.
Moving forward, public forum. Seeing no one, we'll move to committee forum.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Seems like a long time ago, but they had the Millville Centennial Kickoff celebration on the 29th of September. And we had a booth there, and we sold some BMR Superfan T-shirts and some hats. And I'd like to thank Brian Bissonette from the FBLA from the high school for helping out. That's all.
I don't have anything right now.
So the other night I was watching the news and something piqued my interest. They were talking about the NBC is doing their education summit this week. So they've been having a big, symposium. I don't know if you caught any of it. It was pretty interesting. But one of the most interesting things I found was they were talking about the Common Core and how it's having some resistance in different parts of the country. But they talked about Massachusetts. And they brought up something interesting. Not only had Massachusetts started on this path 20 years ago, but the success that they showed was, I was amazed. They said if Massachusetts was its own state, we would have ranked our 8th grade testing in math would have been 6th in the world. In science, 2nd, just behind Singapore. So, when we look at the numbers, I see this stuff coming in different media saying this is where we rank in the world. As a whole country, we're way down here, but boy, as a state, we're way up there. So my recommendation is that we secede with Texas. But just, it's just, I want to use it as
Texas.
Yeah, Texas is
Heard
good
it fell out of
too.
his chair.
Have you heard about the Texas secede?
But we're not going with Texas.
They're not going, no, we'll let them go first, then we'll follow. But I think, we do hear, when you hear the news, it's the bad news. Here's where we rank. But, we carve out the state, and we're doing pretty good. So I think it's encouraging to see that and to, let people know that, we're doing all right. We're leading the country in a lot of areas, and it's great to be in education as one of them. So just want to share that.
I just want to thank everybody who supported the Centennial in Millville. I was involved with that, and especially thank the bands, 2 of the bands that come up and played for us for an hour and a half or so, and that was after their long night of their show. So they had a very busy weekend, and I appreciate their presence there and everybody that showed up to support it.
I guess I'd like to just congratulate those students who earned the Adams Scholarship, which came out like last week or so, and it seemed like, I think the scores have just kind of skyrocketed, so good for them. Congratulations.
I don't have anything.
I just want to actually reiterate something that Brian mentioned about having some kids come in. I think we usually have visits by now, so it would be nice to have some classes come in and give us their presentations soon.
In all fairness, nobody gave me a schedule of what you did, so.
No, I know. It would just be nice. I think they're waiting for the invite from us, so
Yeah.
we'll open that door, I guess.
Mhm.
That's it.
And I just want to concur with, everyone that it's been a good opening. It's been, now we're almost 6 weeks into it. There's still a lot of work to do. The band has been great experiencing for me as a parent. The points increase from week to week. But I do think we have to we have a lot of work in terms of the budget, like you heard tonight, and about just getting a message out there to the public. So I hope we can continue to have the energy around this table to take on some initiatives outside of all this, just to celebrate some of the stuff that you're talking about, all the great things that do happen in this district. We can always get bogged down with issues that come up and lack of this, or we need more of that. But I do think we have to kind of at least take some time and have a little break and celebrate some of the successes. So I'm looking forward to kind of coordinating some of that. So with that, upcoming meetings, our next meeting's on Thursday, October 24th. Like I said, we'll be with the Board of Selectmen from both towns and FinComs from both towns. And that is it for our agenda items. So I'll be looking for a motion to adjourn.
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Red Sox.
What's the schedule beyond the 24th? Is it the
Once in November, once in
Is it
December,
7th?
November 14th, I think.
Is it the 14th or the
Is it-
7th?
I don't-